Hey everybody, welcome back to the 122nd episode of Taps and Patience. Well, I guess welcome to the 122nd episode. You're not welcome back unless you stopped and then started again. I'm AJ with Audacity Micro and Subtract Manufacturing, here with Jacob of Zonum Precision. Did I say it right this time?
You
And
got it
also
right.
Subtract. What's up?
What's going on?
Oh, same old. Back to the big production job.
Good, but I heard that you may have a little bit of a slowdown in teaching as well.
Not a slowed down, just kind of a rejiggering.
That makes sense.
So I was originally supposed to teach this week, and then I got a very ambiguous email that implied that the class this week may or may not be canceled. And so I got that email like Saturday, and nobody works at the school over the weekend. But I had to teach at 7 a.m. Monday morning. And of course, it's, an hour and a half away from my house. Well, it's only an hour in the morning because there's no traffic. And so I was like, well, I don't really know what this email means, if class is actually canceled or not. And if I show up and the class isn't there, that's not a big deal. If I don't show up and the class is there, that's a major problem. And so I just went in the morning anyway and then sat around at the school for an hour and no one showed up. So apparently class is canceled this week, but it's getting moved around to, I think, the week after next. I think the week of the 14th.
Is that your Department of Corrections class or your other one?
No, this is the Allison Transmissions class.
Cool.
So it'll be the same amount of teaching over the course of, like I'm booked out for the next 11 months, and it'll be the same number of weeks. It's just not this week, which is good because of said big production job.
And also holidays this week and all the other fun stuff that goes on around it.
Yeah, I think that's why the class got rescheduled.
That makes
what
sense.
have you been up to?
I've been running some more stainless parts that get lasered, then pre-finished, then sent off to bee blasting, and then come back and get a little finishing op done on them. I've got a couple hundred of those to run, and so I've been working on those very slowly because I may or may not have burned through all of my engraving tools.
Classic.
Yeah, and because I don't order those ones from Haas, they take a little while to come in. So I've been running those kind of in the meantime. We also got like a crazy heat wave that came through, and my shop is not air conditioned, and so I've been prioritizing like going out and running a couple in the morning, because I can put 8 on my table, and they're 4 minutes of cycle time per part, so I get a half hour, so I can get like 2 runs in the morning before I get completely sidetracked and have other stuff that goes on. And then sometimes I'll get another run in the evening. And good news, my spindle does not cool down when it's 109 degrees in the shop all day.
So no thermal expansion, you mean?
Yeah, it's not, especially not an issue when I'm engraving. But yeah, so I normally engrave with the Lakeshore double-ended 20-degree 20 thou ball end engraving tools. Mm. That's what I've used. Like I bought one back when I bought the machine and used one edge forever, and then accidentally crashed it into one of my production Xometry parts like months ago.
Yeah.
Full rapid, crunched the tool holder, the whole nine. So it's double-ended, so I flipped it around. And then I started doing the stainless job, and about 30 of them in, I broke the tip off of it and hadn't realized that I broke the tip off because it's a 20 thou end mill, and it only broke just the tip off. And it was engraving. I got halfway through the lettering and then stopped engraving. And I just figured, maybe I had a weird error with my Z height. So I I touched the tool off with a gauge pin, just seeing where my height was, and was like, it's off by like 9 thou. That's no problem. So I changed it by 9 thou and continued running the part and looked at it, and the engraving looked very weird. And I was just rubbing broken carbide all over the end of the stainless part before I realized. Luckily, I only ruined 2, but Norman in the Discord mentioned that he really likes these Kyocera 20 thou ball end mills, 4 flutes. The 4 flutes are nice because you get a little bit more rigidity and you get a lot more feed rate. And so I bought 2 of those online and tried them, and they worked. They definitely worked, but I broke both of them, and then I went back to a Lakeshore one, and now I've run about 100 parts, and it hasn't broken. So I'm just going to keep going with what works for me. I ordered 6 more of them from Lakeshore, and those should be showing up anytime.
Did you ever look at the end of that 4 flute?
I did not.
Like under a microscope or something? So
no, I need to buy one of those.
I stay away from 4 flute ball mills unless I know I'm going to be like at a surfacing at a 45-degree angle or whatever, because the tip of 4-flute ball mills looks really funky, and it's
Hmm.
actually only 2 flutes at the tip. There's like a gap between the inner 2 flutes and the outer 2 flutes. This is the only way I can describe it. So next
Interesting.
time you're looking at a 4-flute ball mill, look at it. Even for steel, I go with a 2-flute ball mill because the tip geometry is better.
That makes sense.
So
And
just
engraving, like you're literally just using, I guess on a 20 thou ball mill and I'm engraving at 8 thou deep, I'm actually engaging quite a bit of that ball,
yeah,
but that makes sense. I'll have to look at it. I've got a really janky camera lens with a 3D printed mount that I put my phone in, and that's like my
your
microscope.
microscope.
And I should probably just go out and buy the actual one. I know you have an affiliate code for one, so I'll just buy one of those one of these days.
Yeah, the one I have is great.
Yeah.
But if you're, let's say you have a 20 thou ball mill and you program it at 2/10 feed per tooth, you're actually programming that at 4/10 feed per tooth because it doesn't have those middle flutes there
That makes
at the
sense.
very end. So I tend to use 2 flutes for any surfacing because it's just more predictable and I think gives a better finish.
That makes sense. That might have been part of my issue as to why I like immediately doled those tools out, was because I gave them, I think, about 40% more feed rate. And I just did it with the override because I didn't want to repost the program. And yeah, if I'm mostly center cutting in the bottom of and given it's 304 stainless as well, so it's not aluminum or 1018.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Sometimes also when you're engraving, run out matters a ton.
Yeah.
And when you're working with like an ER collet and a TTS tool holder, sometimes you just get lucky and your runout's really good, and sometimes you don't get lucky and your runout's not as good,
Yeah.
unless you're actually measuring it and tapping in the tool, which I assume you're not.
I am.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. The only problem
But
is if it goes back in the tool changer, I have no spindle orient, and so it
yeah,
just goes back however it goes back. So I used a Dremel with a carbide burr, and I put a line on the front of the spindle showing like where
nice.
my index point is. There's also like a matching hole through the pulley over the top of the spindle. And when I bought the machine, the guy who I bought it from told me, hey, when you're probing, make sure that the text on the front of the probe aligns with this hole, like just align all that together. And then you at least have repeatability. Whether or not you're really gaining anything, at least it's repeatability. And so I started doing that, and I was like, well, I don't want to open the spindle cover every time I put the probe in. So I ground that on the front and then realized I took the nut and the collet out of my collet holders and put it in the spindle and just indexed it until I had the lowest possible run out on the inside of the ER mounting face on the taper.
Mm-hmm.
And then I marked that as my 0 point. And then from there, I put the tool in, tap it in, make sure those lines are lined up, and off it goes. But for these parts, these ops that I'm running are only engraving for this specific op. So it's easy enough to put a tool in and leave it in and just push cycle start.
Oh, okay. That actually is a pretty good way of doing it if you're not changing tools in the program at all. So there goes my theory there.
Yeah, one of these days, I was in talks with someone about possibly buying a used Tormach electrical cabinet from a newer machine than what mine is, and it would have the upgraded board, the Ethernet communication board. It's like a Mesa board, and it's got a different VFD in it that allows you to actually do the orientation. Obviously, it would require still the encoder on the spindle and a couple other things, but it would at least like set me on the right path to possibly go towards BT30 or at least possibly spindle orient with TTS. And that would like completely change that machine for me.
You listen to the Business of Machining, right?
Usually.
You know how every now and then Grimsmo will come up with an idea and Saunders will go, John, no.
Is that one of these?
Yeah, Jacob, no. Just get a different machine.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I don't disagree with that.
Too much lipstick for a pig.
I mean, realistically, the castings of my machine is like the same as the newer ones.
Oh, I don't disagree that it would be an upgrade. I just don't think it's worth your time.
Oh, yeah. So I've been running these parts. I have a scheduled lull in part production, mostly because like it's getting hot in summer. I'd much rather sit in my air conditioned office and work on subtract systems. And we've been getting quotes and everything, and that is taking up its own time. So like I have some scheduled time coming up here soon where it's like I'm not even going to turn on the machine, like outside of turning it on every day to run the coolant. That it like if I wanted to shop projects in the evenings, I could definitely do that, but it's not a super high priority. If you couldn't tell by I've had the machine for however many years now, and I still haven't done anything about it.
I wonder if you could find an office mill up there because they tend to go for really cheap.
Do they?
Yeah, and they're easy to move and single phase.
That is nice. I just about had a super mini mill bought for a pretty damn good deal. And realistically, by time, like it was a good deal for the machine. Shout out Murray out there. I know you're going to listen. A really good deal. Like it was a good deal on the machine. There was a lot of other costs associated with me, like, okay, getting it on a trailer and bring it up here. Even if I chose not to fly down there, I trust him to get it on a hot shot and send it on its way. But just getting it moved and getting 3-phase set up, it was a bigger financial obligation than I was prepared for originally. When it's like, oh, the price of the machine, and you
Yeah.
realistically need to add 50 to 100% more to get it in your shop and to get tool holders and vices and probably a Saunders plate, whatever else. And then at the end of the day, I'm in it like really, really close to 30 grand cash that I have to float, and 30 grand would be a phenomenal down payment on a newer super mini mill that has a 30 position tool changer instead of 10 and has a more modern control on it and has, better options. Given that machine had wireless probing on it and it had um, rigid tapping and a couple other like nice to haves already set up. But again, I could have a brand new one with a warranty and I could put it on a payment with the same kind of money out of pocket. So,
And Haas financing's so good.
yeah. So that, I mean, not that I've made up my mind on any of that, but that was like the corner that I backed myself into. And so we'll see what ends up happening. Realistically, that Tormach has now paid for itself 4 or 5 times over from what I've paid for it and put into it. It, for all intents and purposes, has been pretty reliable. Once every 90 days or so, I probably have to pull the computer out because a RAM stick went dead or the Mesa card came unseated the from the DIMM slot for the RAM. Like couple little things. The touchscreen decides when it wants to work or not, but I could just go buy a touchscreen, or I could just continue using the mouse and keyboard shortcuts and not worry about it.
Yeah.
So that's my shop revelations this week. Have what else? You said you've been working on the big job.
Yeah, so it took me a little while to kind of get back in the swing of production on that thing. I, well, I say that. I got it up and running and it ran great for like 2 or 3 days. And then I came in one day and the probe tip was broken, which was a bigger problem than it should have been because the probe tip I had on there was the Tormach one. And the Tormach one, for some reason, is actually like the best probe tip that I've ever found. It has a cool feature where it's like necked down around the ruby, where a normal probe tip has like a 4 millimeter shaft and then a 6 millimeter ball that basically gives you a millimeter on either side. Where if you have like a burr or whatever, you can basically probe around something up to a millimeter long, millimeter wide. But with the Tormach probe, it was necked down to 2 millimeters. And so you got, what is that? 2 millimeters to 6 millimeters. You got 2 millimeters on either side.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way that I was machining these parts, it left a really big burr on the top of them.
Hmm.
And being able to probe around it was great. And my whole process for Op 2 was built around being able to probe it in by reaching around this onion skin that was left. Now, I broke that probing tip. And of course, all the spares I have are a 2 millimeter ball on a 1 millimeter shaft. So they only reach around a half millimeter. And
Right.
that's what I use on my office mill. It's the most useful size for the work that I do. And so I wasn't stocking any of the Tormach probe tips because I was counting on replacing it with a different one. I have plenty of the 2 millimeter ones, but none of these Tormach ones. And I was like, well, okay, I could rework my whole program so that it doesn't need this, extra clearance probe tip. But, this program's been working really reliable with me. Like it was a pain to get set up the first time. I had a lot of, aches and pains getting this job into production. And then I ran like 1,200 parts with 0 defects. Like it was dialed. I was like, I don't want to screw with this program at all. And so the Tormach probe tip for some reason is like $150, and also shipping. I think it's 2-day shipping unless you pay for faster shipping. It's like, do you know what? For $200, I would rather the process reliability and not having to screw with everything. So, and I never figured out why I broke the original probe tip. I assumed that it hit a pile of chips when it, like during a travel move, and it broke it off.
That makes sense. Is the washdown just not working properly on that machine, or like
The washdown doesn't take care of the table, and there's a couple places on the
oh,
table where chips build up.
that makes sense. That makes tons of sense. Have you gone around Tormach and seen if you can just buy the probe tips directly from Pioneer? Since I pretty much guarantee that's where they're coming from.
I never like emailed Pioneer, but I checked eBay and Amazon and all of the normal places. I checked, like, there's a couple companies that just sell probe tips,
Right.
and I couldn't find anything exactly like this.
Gotcha.
There are a couple that are like a cylindric probe tip instead of a ball, and I considered those, but it was just cheaper to buy the Tormach one again at that point. So I bit the bullet. I bought this probe tip, and I started running parts again. It ran a couple fine, and then I heard a bang while I was in here while the parts were running. And so I walked out and I looked at the machine, and the machine was running fine. And I went, okay, I wonder if the saw just finished a cut or something. It was the material falling off the saw. Went back to my office, went back to my office, waited for that cycle to end, changed the parts, came back into my office, and then I heard kind of the same bang again. And I went back out, and it was running the same tools, running my face mill, which it does right before it does the probing operation. And I it's like, okay, this is weird. Something's going on. I watched it. I would kind of played with the feed override. I slowed it down and just was looking at it to see what was going on. And there was nothing obvious. I think at one point I paused it and took the tool out and checked the pull stud and put the tool back in and hit go again. And it's like, okay, whatever. So I kept watching it for a couple minutes. After the face mill is the probe. And I watched the tool change to the probe. The tool changer kind of halfway missed, and the probe, how do I word this? It was like a little bit misaligned, and it hit the drive dogs a little bit, and then it got sucked in, and that was the bang. When the tool was half hitting the drive dogs and then, going in that last half inch or whatever and smacking against the spindle nose.
Gotcha.
Well, and that is when I found out that's what was breaking the probe tips. When it did that bang, it was violent enough that it just broke the ceramic tip. It didn't hit anything, just the shock shot the tip straight down into the chip tray.
Interesting. That neck down area on that probe is ceramic?
The whole stick is ceramic. Actually, the neck down area is the one part that's steel.
Gotcha.
But they have the ceramic breakaway section, just like a normal Renishaw probe.
Right.
But just the shock of that misload was enough to break the probe tip. And I was like, well, crap, there goes my $200 I just spent on that probe tip. It ran for like 2 days. And now I either have to spend another $200 or rework my system.
AJ, you know what you must do, right?
Make my own probe tips?
You need to Kanban probe tips.
Oh. Well, I do. I have them Kanban, but I have the probe tips that I use on the office mill Kanban, because that's what I was going to replace the one in the Tormach with. I was never going to reorder the Tormach probe tips. So,
how's that going for you?
Well, it had been going away well until it wasn't. So it was like, crap, now I've got 2 problems. And so the first thing I did is I took all of the tools out of the ATC and I tore that sucker down as far as I could. I went all the way down to tearing apart the gearbox. And so I pulled everything out. There was nothing obviously wrong with it. Oh, I should back up. When I started playing with this, like when I was diagnosing the problem, I realized there was a ton of backlash, like in the ATC. It was able to backlash by like probably 75% of a tool pocket. And so no matter how well I had it like calibrated, the backlash was making it floppy and inconsistent. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to tear this down before, I go yell at Tormach or whatever. And I tore it all down. There was nothing obvious. I re-lubricated it and put it all back together, and that fixed the problem. So I talking to Norman afterwards, it seems like what I did is there is a set screw that tightens down a key, like a shaft key. And I think, which by the way, I could have just accessed from the outside. And according to Norman, sometimes those come loose and cause this problem. So tearing down the whole thing was just a waste of time, and I could have just tightened a single screw. But I didn't know that. And when I put it back together, I just got lucky and happened to tighten the screw that was the problem. And since then, my ATC has been better than it was from the factory, either because I put more grease on it or just because everything's tightened up better than it was from the factory. So it's working really, really, really well now. But then I had to rework my program. And the easy solution would have been, and this is where bad practices got me in trouble. The easy solution would have been to make sure that on op 1, I was cutting a little bit deeper down below the part than I had to, so that onion skin would just get machined off when I face the top. It turns out the reason there's that onion skin that I can't get rid of is because I am using a tool that has a small radius. It's like a 20 thou radius to do my roughing. And I'm only going down as deep as the part. So that way, when you face it off, you're basically left with that 20 thou radius, which would then later get chamfered off. So it's not like it doesn't show up on the part or anything. But that was always leaving an onion skin. And there's not really much I could do about it because the way I'm running these parts, I'm doing a very non-traditional method of doing a 1.5 piece flow. So half of my parts are being single pieced flowed. The other half are going into a box, and I run the op 2 and 3 later on them. It amortizes out some tool changes, and op 1 has the most tool changes. So it's weird, but it actually saves a fair amount of cycle time. It makes my walk away time on op 1 longer. But that meant I had 100 pieces or whatever of op 1 that I couldn't go back and change the program on, which, by the way, people, this is why you do single piece flow, so you don't get yourself trapped like I did. But sorry, I lost the thread there. So I had to figure out something, and I'm using those little Chinese self-centering vices for op 2 on this part. I took one of the ones with serrated teeth and I ground off the serrations to make them just flat jaws. And that's how I'm holding them for op 2. That was the issue I had with work holding the first time around, was this one operation. But I was just putting them in the self-centering vices and then probing to find the X position. So I ended up throwing together a quick and dirty work stop by taking one of those like Noga arms off of the magnetic block and epoxying it into a half 13 bolt, and then screwing that into my Saunders table and locating that against the part and tightening it down. And that's actually worked pretty well. So now it has a work stop, and because of that, I can wait and then probe much later in the operation, or much later in the program. And by that point, the hat is completely gone. So all of that is to say, it took me a long time to get this program back up and running after, trying to get it restarted so I could get back into, really moving on production.
Out of all of the sins in that entire story, 1.5 piece flow and tearing apart your ATC in the middle of a production run and probe tips, and why do I hate most that you like glued on a bolt to your Noga mount and like why?
So you're not
it okay?
wrong.
Wait, was it a real Noga mount or was it an Amazon import?
No, it was a import cheapo one.
My heart feels a little better, but man, that was getting me riled up for a second.
Well, And if that was a better work stop, if it was a little bit more rigid, I probably wouldn't need to do the probing operation at all. But I don't trust it to not like it. It'll generally stay in the same place, but it's a little bit noodly. And if you push the part too hard against it, it'll definitely like just kind of, everything is rubber out of the way a little bit. And so it gets me a general area, within 5 or 10 thou, which is good enough to rough off the top. But then I probe a hole that's machined in op1, and that gives me my final position for when I do the chamfers, so that the chamfers look good.
Sure. That makes
But
sense. Sounds like a lot of fun.
yeah, I was unhappy through a lot of this. I was not having fun.
I could tell. So for the audience, I am on the West Coast. EJ is, I guess, AJ's Midwest, not East Coast, but very different time zones. And it's hilarious to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and see the threads that are happening on Discord between either AJ and I, where it's just word vomit in our DMs or in the actual Discord talking about the errors and the issues. And all of the Patreons are trying to troubleshoot what's going on.
Did I complain about this on Discord? I don't even remember.
Maybe not this specific one, but something along these lines happened the other day. And me and my waking up at 6:30 and just super groggy. These messages have been going on for the last 2.5 hours as he's been trying to figure out what's going on. Most of the time, it's it's pretty hilarious to see. Where I was going with that, I have no idea, but
I am happy to say that I have been up and running. And I think I had one defect from when I was still tweaking the program, where I didn't have a adaptive on the second operation constrained right, and the adaptive kissed a finished face, and it left just a little bit of a dimple. But other than that, I'm back to running production fairly smoothly. Because of where I put the probing operation, it actually removed two tool changes. And so my cycle time sped up by, I don't know, 30 seconds or whatever. So we're moving along faster than we were. And realistically, this is probably a better process than what I was doing. But now I just need to run a whole bunch more. I shipped 210 of these yesterday. And so I have 390 left.
So a couple weeks you'll be done?
Yeah. Well, if I'm not teaching this week, and I don't think I'm teaching next week, the holidays kind of cut this week a little bit shorter for me, but I think like as long as I don't do another this morning, where I procrastinated for the first half of the day and then recorded a podcast, I should be able to be done before the end of next week.
I'm sorry, I was not waking up at 5 a.m. to record a podcast again.
Well, don't worry, neither was I. Yesterday was a bad day for a different reason.
I get that. Well, look at the bright side. You're doing all these, and now you don't have to run those crazy subtract parts that we almost drug you in to run.
I wouldn't have minded. I was actually kind of looking forward to those.
Were you, though?
I like the idea.
That's fair.
It's my... How do I word this? My job shop experience has always been, from day one, the most stressful thing is not making the parts. It's everything else that goes around why you also need to be making parts. Like, I need to make parts, but also I need to teach a class tonight. Or I need to make parts, but also I need to fix my machine tonight. So I would have liked to make the parts, but also my schedule has been so booked lately. Actually, much less these next 2 weeks, but parts would have made other things that aren't stressful.
That makes sense.
So I'm kind of glad I'm not, but also I would have liked to make the parts.
Yeah.
Anyway, you want to talk about those subtract parts in that big job?
Let's do it.
Do it.
Okay. So we're talking about some parts that came in. We've been slowly working through our system. It originally started off, I don't know if Tristan listens to this podcast. If you do, what's up, Tristan? We were contacted by an engineer for a medical manufacturer and just said, hey, I've got this one part. I want to see what you guys quoted at. If you quote it well, I'll give you a bunch of work. The typical, give me a good price on this one, I'll bring you others. But we quoted it, in the realm of aggressive. I think the part was like 58 inches long. 1018, pretty simple plate work. Um, and we looked at it and gave a decent price, like definitely doable, and sent it back. And he says, "Oh, this sounds great," and gave us then 20 parts to quote, and we quoted a bunch of those. And they looked through and kind of changed their mind on the project and hit us back with, I think, just shy of 10 parts. And they're all 1018. Some of them are big, like 18 by 12 plates. And these other ones that I was talking about AJ making, one of them is 67 inches long by 3 by 5/8, and the other one is like 48 by 3 by 5/8. And they're big like mounting rails for linear rails. So they're 1018, and we went back and forth about trying to get precision ground stock or how to make those specific parts. Um, but luckily, we had someone kind of in our pocket that was able to help out, local to me, that was able to come in and give us a hand with those, and using I think local laser or water jetting place to get the blanks done, and just hanging them out the doors on the VF2 and letting it happen. So that that is the largest RFQ we've gotten to date in terms of part count, it, quantities, SKUs, and price. And even after we slashed about 50%, at least 50% of the order, the PO amount was, again, our largest single PO. I think this PO was about what we did last month in revenue. Oh, was
Yeah, no, it was twice what we did, or almost twice.
Yeah. Um, so big order, big money. Um, some of the parts are kind of weird. There's some like servo mounts that are like 5 inches cubed, and you have to have 4 inches of reach with an end mill to get down in the bottom. But they do call out
Perfect EJ parts. Yeah.
Yeah, they also do call out welding as an ability, and so he went back and forth and looked at EJ is doing those. He looked at getting solid material, and getting a block that size was apparently going to be really expensive for him. So he's going to do them out of plate, weld them, and then machine the welds and send it. So it's been a lot of work lately, is communicating back and forth, because this is a larger medical manufacturer. We're talking with engineers on the parts, and then we're talking with accounts payable to actually get paid on it, and we're talking with the buyers to get set up as approved. It's been not a zero amount of work to make that happen. So it's really exciting to actually see it push forward and see the parts go into production and make all that happen, and not have to make AJ do it. Even though now we have there's some mold work that's on there that needs to get done at some point. Did someone end
Did
up?
we ever hear back from that guy?
I think we're still quiet from him, but
Okay. I sent a follow-up email yesterday.
oh, did you? He did tell us that we would basically guaranteed get the job, but he had to work with his customer on getting, a couple changes made. Um, so that'll be good. Did we get that job from Easton?
Yes, we did.
Cool. Shout out Moria. Well, not Mariah, at least I hope. So I think it's some UHMW, so that'll be good. So yeah, we've got like a bunch of parts flowing through right now. I think we over doubled revenue, and we did really well profits wise on that. Like I felt like we were more efficient, as well as like our bottom line, or like our recurring expenses don't change too much, and so when we make a lot more in revenue, then like it ends up just padding the bottom line.
I think we nailed the quote dead on for the medical company, the big job. I think we quoted that exactly, both what it needed to be for them and what it needed to be for us and what it needed to be for the shops. If we quote everything like that again, like I think we will be golden. I think they're a really good customer for us, where they need good quality parts fast, but they also don't need something that's just beyond our network's capabilities right now. There, it's not like rocket engine stuff.
Sure.
The UHMW stuff for Easton, I think we quoted low, and I kind of knew that. Like I tweaked the numbers to get them as low as I possibly could for him, both because he's kind of he's a good guy who's in the community, and also because like it was a cullet rack, and like it's not high end to work. Like it needed the lower price. It's a super safe job too. Like he's like, we're not going to make scrap on this job. Like, he's going to get it right the first time. Uh,
Yeah, our vendor won't even need to measure it with calipers. He'll just put a 5C collet in it and make sure it fits.
He will measure it with calipers.
He
But yeah,
will, but he doesn't need to.
we're gonna ship him a 5C collet if he doesn't have one, so that he can use it. So I priced that a little bit low, I think, and in the future would probably price it higher. And if we don't get the job, we don't get the job. It is what it is.
Right.
Ooh, and that was our first time we got a shop get an affiliate commission.
Oh, that's right.
So that was sent to us by Norman, and so Norman gets basically all of the profit on the job.
Basically, yeah, which is fine. And I think we have
But
another job floating through that was some like wedges for a lathe turret or something like that too.
oh yeah, I forgot about that one. I don't think
Ryan's
much has
been,
happened.
yeah, just working on the parts. He's kind of one of those quiet people on the network that he just like you give him a part and he just quietly goes into his hole and works on it, and it's pretty great.
Yeah, when I was that was one where I had to kind of tweak our numbers a little bit to to make them give me something that I thought this guy would go for. And I thought they would be too expensive for him, but I couldn't make the math work out to be any cheaper.
Yeah.
They did end up being a little bit smaller than I was picturing them. So like I think it kind of works out, and the shop who took them was happy to take the job. Again, those are a low precision. That was a metal job with a plus or minus 10 thou tolerance. So a pretty low risk, pretty easy one. It's not the right kind of work for us though. It
No,
was
definitely.
we low value jobs get quoted way high by our current quoting process. Um, I'm still undecided if that's a bad thing. Do we want the low value jobs? I mean, right now my answer is yes. Any work, even if we're not taking a profit on it, is good because it kind of gets our name out there. But in the long term, I don't think we want to be buried with low value work.
Sure. Well, like what ended up happening with this current medical manufacturer was so we got all the parts a long time ago. We started looking at matching vendors kind of early in the process before we like got the PO just to kind of see what people's workload was to see if this was something that people had done similar work to. Um and well, everyone was excited. We're like, man, this like the original quote was like a lot of money. And so everyone was really excited about it. Everyone was fingers crossed. We had people asking us, hey, is there subtract work to do? Like the first half of the month was a little slow for us. And then all of a sudden this job comes through and we start putting it on the board. The PO had a I don't want to say an unreasonable date. I won't say it's unreasonable, but like the timeline of the PO coming in plus a weekend plus the holiday plus everything else, the way that it all lined up was like this was like a crazy rush order, especially for the complexity of some of the parts. And that's what ended up making it on our job posting for it. And a lot of people kind of like went up into their shells and were like, no, I don't want to touch it. And it took some beating of the bush a little bit. Like I had to call individual people that said they were excited about the work and basically say, well, that lead time's not actually real. Like here's more what we're thinking. Is the price bad? Like what's wrong? And it was the perfect combination of, well, I was a little scared of the date, so because of that I didn't like rush to go get quotes for material and actually start looking at the parts. And because of that they sat on our listing for 24 hours or whatever before anyone really had a chance to look at them.
I think part of that is we've been putting out our quality guidance, like our inspection standards, I guess they are, which I still need to do a bunch more work on. But I
Sure.
put out the rough draft of those, and I put out the rough draft of our shop agreement. And the shop agreement hammers home quality
Yeah.
like a lot. And we were talking about some of that. And the shop agreement is very, very clear. If you can't make these parts to an outstanding degree of quality, then don't take the job. And so with the short lead times, I think that scared some of the shops into being like, you know, he said not to take him if I'm not 100% sure I can't do him with the quality on time. Um, and so they were being responsible. Like,
It makes sense, totally. And technically, it's no longer a draft shop agreement. We have one of the new ones signed
yes.
officially, which is great. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate you till to the end. Yeah. So it's we're making the parts. Everyone seems pretty happy. Like everyone that I called and was like, I was kind of worried about the price because on my I wouldn't do it in my shop for that price, mostly because I don't have the right equipment for it and it's outside of my I love plate work. I will do plate work, but I can't do 18-inch plate work on a Tormach. At least not my Tormach.
That was the other problem. Our shops have small machines.
Yeah.
Even even the shops with big machines are like a robo drill or a speedio.
Yeah, Speedio S700 is not that small. Robo Drill is on the small side. I forget which machine Ryan has. Kyle's got
Isn't
a
it like a
VF2.
VF4 or something?
What was that?
Oh no, sorry, wrong person. Wrong person. Never mind.
Ryan's got an older. I always I get weirded out when I see the pictures of his machine because his vise sits sideways in it, and it very much looks like you're working in the
That
side door of
bothers
the
me.
machine.
Yeah.
I want to say it's like an older Matsura, but I know that's not the right word. But it's an import machine. I think it was Cat 30 or something weird like that, or BT 40. Either way, yeah, we're not. We have a lot of people who specialize in a lot of different things, but we end up having similar sized machines for a lot of these tasks. It works out. I mean, we're able to do. I think we have 30 open orders to date, or a lot of them are closed, but that's where we're at order number wise. And in 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty good so far.
Yeah, I thought our revenue for this month was going to be like $1,000 because the first month was our launch month and there was some excitement around it. Like it was a new
Sure.
thing. There's people in the community that were going to try to support us regardless. But I was like, okay, that's going to die out in the first month, and then the second month is going to be crickets, and we'll have to actually do sales. But double revenue.
Yeah,
So that's cool.
I mean, we did sit down twice in the month, and I'm building a lot of the technology stuff. Been working on our dashboard and our backend systems, and actually taking our quoting, which is done pretty manually, basically with a spreadsheet and or a notepad document
And
and a
Toolpath.
calculator and Toolpath, of course, and turning that into something more usable than it currently is, integrating notifications for payments and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And Scott is still working a good amount and is I have put plenty of things on his plate, so I don't want to bug him. And there was a couple times this month where AJ sat down and said, "We're not getting sales. I need to go sell. And how do we sell?" And we started to put together sales plans and social media plans and all these other things. And then without executing any of them, we just started getting work.
Getting sales.
So I don't know what magic you did, but it worked.
That's actually a good question. How are we getting sales? I don't know. Which is probably why we're not getting more of them.
Probably.
But okay, so I have the Airtable pulled up here. So we have one job right now that we're waiting for the customer to revise the design after we gave them DFM feedback. We have one job that I think we're certainly going to get. We're just waiting for them to pay. Then we have one job that's in production, and then the big job that's been divided out between. Oh, okay. We have two jobs right now that are in production, and then plus the big job. So 3 jobs in production, one job waiting for payment, one job waiting for DFM review. So not bad. I think it
RFQ since we started recording the podcast.
Did we really?
Yeah, you didn't see the notification?
No, I'm recording a podcast. I was looking at the Airtable document, and I remember you submitting a test quote last night or sometime, and I thought that's what that was.
Oh, maybe. I got an email, and the email means the form was submitted, so it should be a semi-real RFQ.
Hey, it's the guy that we're making a different part for.
Oh.
He is... Ooh, this is a lathe part.
Norman.
Yeah. Is there tolerances on it?
AJ, we're recording a podcast.
Oh. 10 micron.
On how big of a diameter?
It was like 70 millimeters or something.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, 3 inch roughly. A little under.
So I've already forgotten which parts we were making for this guy, but he was one of our previous orders. So that's a good sign.
That is a good sign.
But that will need to be on a lathe if we're going to hit that tight of tolerance.
Definitely.
It's a pretty simple part. I might actually do that on a school lathe because I need practice on a lathe. Anyway,
That makes sense. And that brings us to an interesting point. We have not priced lathe work yet. Toolpath doesn't do
yeah,
lathe work.
that is a
So,
good question.
guys are
We don't know
figuring
how
out
to do
live.
that yet. Yep.
Good luck, AJ.
Lathe work is much more conducive to the container method than mill work
Sure.
because they're like you don't do a lot of selecting edges and stuff on it. So maybe we set up a fusion template to give us just a rough time.
Sure.
I'll add that to my list of things that I'll never get to.
Probably.
So that's exciting.
That is exciting.
That so threw me off because I thought that was a fake order.
Oh, no, I haven't sent any fake orders in. We do have some very weird triggers in our automations, right? So like the way that we're notified of orders is a little funky. And so sometimes if you get the right like storm of items, you can get triggered for it. And that's what happened the other
Yeah.
day was I was reordering. Like we had the big order. I split it up into a different order for each part. That way, depending on what shops wanted what parts, we could merge them back together fairly easily. And one of like the trigger is, hey, if this RFQ doesn't have any attached parts or attached orders to it, then you have to run an automation to like generate the parts and to send the notifications and everything. And because I had moved all the parts and orders off of it, I hadn't relinked anything to the RFQ, and it happily started chugging along and recreating orders and line items and everything in the database. So yeah, that was a whoopsie on my part.
It is Freaky Climber. He's not on our network yet, but do you know if his lathe's working?
I have not spoken with James in a little while. We started joking because it just so happened that like almost every Friday, me and Jamie JSpec from Lone Machinist ended up hanging out on the Discord. And James would always pop in and say, "Oh, it's the average Friday Jacob and Jamie hang out." And last week it just so happened to happen on Thursday instead. And he was very confused. And normally he hangs around and we chit chat, but he did not this time. So I'll ping him.
Okay, yeah, because we need a good lathe guy on the network.
And he's a good lathe guy. I just hope he gets that machine up and running soon.
Yeah. We did onboard our first person. That's something we had talked about. We had a meeting if we were going to onboard new people, if we needed to yet. And our decision was for the most part, no, we don't have enough work for it most of the time. But we needed someone with a bigger machine for this job. Like we just needed the extra capabilities.
Percent.
So,
and we like really actually started looking at our numbers and who is on our like what vendors we have, who's on our board, who do we trust, how do we make all that happen. And it was like, okay, well, if you forget the fact that me and AJ are both technically on the board, and I'm sure as heck not doing a 68-inch long 1018 part on my Tormach. And then we had one person on there who we haven't seen any communications from. Like I haven't seen or heard or anything. No chit chat when we're kind of hanging out talking. So
yeah, he was very excited to join, and then I don't know if like he got busy or had medical problems or what, but he's just gone. So he might get kicked off.
Not kicked off.
By kicked
We
off,
asked him nicely if he still wants to be a part of this.
Yeah.
I won't go as far as to like set revenue goals for our shops, meaning like you have to take X amount of work to stay on the network. But like incentivizing people to take work is good. And everyone said the prices have been good so far. Like this job, everyone said, oh yeah, like prices are great. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so we got to test our kind of systems and all the things that we put into place and did actual like document signing and bank setup. I think he's a little bit of a guinea pig because most of our early vendors, we just said, sure, like we trust all of you people that we brought on originally because they're friends and locals and kind of part of our otherwise community. And well, Kyle is trusted, sure. That was like the first question that AJ asked me when I mentioned bringing him on, but like we hadn't actually gotten to test any of this other stuff. Like we're hosting our own signing system for document signing, and we're writing all this stuff, and went smoothly.
Yeah, I don't think this really counts as a full test of our onboarding system because it wasn't a complete rando. Like it was
Sure.
somebody that you knew and trusted.
Yeah.
And our system for do we trust this guy was me going, "Hey Jacob, do you trust him?" "Okay, I trust you. If you trust him, let's bring him on." The other day, Dylan with Intolerance Dylan asked, how do we define trust and how do you build that trust with a shop before bringing them on? And my answer is still, I don't know. We're cheating right now, just depending on our network. And you know, maybe that's how we always do it, is we always go off of shop recommendations. I'm not opposed to that.
Invite only kind of situation.
But I still just don't know the right way of doing it. So in the meantime, when we don't need the scale of having, we don't need to bring on 10 shops a month or 100 shops a year or whatever, we can do it just based off of network and relationships. And
For
that's
now.
the easy way around it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. That's part of like our mantra and business model at Subtract is like we just trust people, and if they break the trust, then we work on that. And sometimes it's not so much as breaking trust, it's a small bad decision or something that like we don't necessarily agree with, and it's a good opportunity to like, hey, this is how we want to do things at Subtract. Like you're using our name, we're the ones paying you, and we haven't had it yet where someone says, I don't want to do that. But everyone's been pretty receptive to, hey, update. We like to do this a little differently.
Yeah. And like we haven't really like, other than our inspection system, which isn't anything unusual. I think the only thing that's unique about our inspection system is there's a pretty well-defined rubric of how you decide how many parts to inspect.
Yeah,
Like if you're doing a batch of 100 or whatever, how do you choose your samples? I think that's the only thing that's really unique about that. Otherwise, it's pretty generic, QMS in a box kind of stuff. But I was thinking about this the other day. What if I want to provide a bunch of systems to our shops that they can use. I also
sure.
don't want to mandate them to the shops. Shops should have the freedom to choose. But what if we put a set of those in place that we see as like the minimum core set? And if you, as a shop, follow all of those minimum, core steps of processes, and I don't know what this would look like yet, but what if, you certify that you follow these and, maybe we have some way of tracking it, maybe we don't. But if you follow those systems, we will ensure with an I, ensure your parts against remakes. So if follow our system and your part gets rejected, we will, cover the whole cost for you to make the part again or cover materials. Because you are following every single one of our best practices and our inspection stuff. And at some point, like if you're doing everything right and you're following the right systems, like every now and then you'll still have a part rejected on a fluke.
Sure.
And so that, would that be a good carrot for getting people to follow our best practices? Would it encourage sloppiness? Would it matter? I don't know. It was just something I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's a good thing to think about. I put it on our notes for our next agenda meeting for Subtract.
I don't even think we're there yet. I think we need to finish building out the systems before we start trying to
So many systems.
encourage people to use them. There's a lot of work there. Even, like I said, I worked on our inspection system, but it's still not remotely done.
Sure. Well, I think that this leads into something interesting that I actually wanted to mention quickly and talk about, something that like resonated me with Ethan on Instagram, Ethan Patain, e.patain15, I think. He, if you guys don't know, he went to school for machining and has done a lot of mentorship. He did an internship with Dylan from Within Tolerance as well, and has kind of run around and worked with a lot of the big name players out there. He posted on his Instagram maybe yesterday, and he said that he likes to take a notebook, and this was like, he said he recommends this for people, right? And it resonated with me. He takes a notebook and he writes down what he put 3 notes, right? What filled me with enthusiasm today? What drained me of enthusiasm today? And what did I learn about myself today? And you write those 3 things down in a notebook, and at the end of every day, you fill those 3 in. And after 30 days, at the end of the month, you go through and you figure out the things that happened a lot of times over and over again throughout the month, and you figure out how to remove them. And that's your goal for the next 30 days. And you figure out the things. Some of his examples were, go back to that sandwich spot that had an amazing sandwich, or call that friend who called you twice this month, who you really enjoyed talking to, and like enforce those good things that happened to you, and cut out the bad stuff. And that like resonated a lot about like what we're kind of doing with Subtract, like figuring out what processes, what we're doing, like what things make us feel good about what we're doing, what things are making us move in the right direction. It was like an interesting take on taking that into your own life and doing things for you as a person to like make your personal schema better,
Yeah.
I
It's
thought that
kind
was
of like
cool.
all the lean people say, start by just fixing what bugs you.
Yeah.
But applied at a higher level even than, the shop floor.
Yeah. No, it was a nice, like, write it down and follow through. It was a good disciplinary, almost on the level of meditation, but not quite there yet. But yeah, I really liked that. So I'm gonna be trying to bring some of that to Subtract a little bit.
So we're probably just about out of time here. I may have made a bad decision, like an actually bad decision, not like a haha I bought a machine bad decision, but like an actual bad decision yesterday.
You bought a different kind of machine?
I did. I bought a different kind of machine. I bought a car, and the justification on paper for this one is actually very good. So with teaching, I'm driving like a lot because it's far away. It's like 140 miles a day that I'm driving. And the 2 cars we have right now are like the minivan that, my wife uses with the kids, and the truck. The truck, I don't even know what miles per gallon it gets. It's like 10 or 15 or something. It's bad. And the van is 25. So I've been taking the van because I've been teaching in the evenings. My wife can use the van all day, and then, it doesn't matter if it's gone in the evenings. But with me teaching during the day more, I was like, okay, I need something more fuel efficient. And so I got looking around and was like, okay, old Priuses you can get pretty cheap, and they get like 45 miles to the gallon. The math was, it basically, it would save me about $50 a week.
Wow.
And so I was looking at these Priuses. My budget was around 4,000 or 5,000. And, I was kind of keeping my eyeball out for one. And then I found one for 1,800. And I was like, well, it's super cheap. And we drove 2 hours to go look at it yesterday. I ended up paying 1,500 for it. And it was like, the outside of it was in pretty rough shape. The interior was fine. I drove it around the parking lot a couple times, and it seemed fine. So I was like, you know what, $1,500, whatever. By my math, that'll pay for itself in 30 weeks over driving the van, and it's like 10 or 15 weeks compared to driving the truck, just in terms of fuel efficiency, not including convenience factor. So I was like, fine, whatever, I'll do it. And so signed the title, drove off, and the first thing I noticed is, wait, why isn't the air conditioning cold? I thought the air conditioning was cold when I was doing the test drive, and apparently it just wasn't. I think I just like completely missed that. So it doesn't have air conditioning. And yesterday, it's been so hot here recently. We've had this super huge heat wave, and this is actually what caused me to miss all of the problems that I'm about to discuss, was because of the heat. We were in this parking lot, and direct sun, it was like probably 100 degrees, like thermometer, but heat index was like 110. The sun was so bright that I couldn't see any of the screens in the car. And even just like driving down in our well air conditioned van, it was causing my phone to overheat because the sun was directly hitting my phone, and I had to have my phone on direct brightness, and it was just kept overheating my phone. And because of that, I couldn't see the consoles or anything in the car, the new one, the Prius. And so started driving home and was like, oh crap, the air conditioner doesn't work. And also the speedometer doesn't work. There's no backlight to it. So even if it's dark, you can't see it, which I thought that was just a lighting thing of where we were. So there's no speedometer, there's no AC. Also no fuel gauge because that goes with the speedometer. It's all on that like same dashboard. And I'm like slowly regretting my decision more. And then I got on the highway and I had an error code show up on the little console. I was like, oh great, what is this? And so I stopped at an AutoZone and had them, plug it in. And there was kind of a laundry list of error codes that hopefully aren't anything too serious. But I was there and I started like checking the fuses to see if that was the air conditioner. And I'm, just in this AutoZone parking lot and I checked the oil and it started raining on me. And it was raining, but it was still like 95 degrees out. And so it was just hot and swampy and miserable. And I was very unhappy with my purchase at that point. And then I started driving home and it got dark because I spent way too long at the AutoZone. I played around in the parking lot for like an hour and a half. And then I found out that there was a headlight out and the other one's super dim. So I stopped at a different AutoZone and I bought a spare headlight to put in.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, I don't know if this was worth it. I should have just spent the $4,000 on one that was a little bit nicer.
I'll tell you right now, it wasn't, man.
So I might I don't know. I'm torn. Like I said, it'll pay for itself. Not even in assuming that the value goes to zero and I can't resell it. It'll pay for itself in 16 weeks over driving the truck, and I can be miserable for one round trip a day for 16 weeks. But it was like I have chosen poorly here. So I may drive it for a couple weeks and fix up some of the easy stuff. Some vacuum it out. There was a bunch of trash in the glove box. There was an ABS sensor that it needs. That should be pretty easy to fix, and that might actually fix a bunch of the other stuff. But then just resell it for the same price or a little bit more.
Remember how you told me no about my Tormach project earlier?
Yeah.
AJ, no. You bought this thing as a tool to fix a problem that you were having, and now
it does
its own
technically fix the problem. It drives fine. I can't tell how much gas it has in it, but I filled it up. The first thing I did when I got it was fill it up, and then when I got home, I filled it up again, and it was 2 gallons of gas for 100 miles. So it gets the fuel economy that I needed. It's just not fun to drive.
Yeah, I don't know.
I bought the Fadal of cars.
Yeah. My goodness. That does not sound like a wise decision. What's going to end up happening is you're like, oh, I bought something that's going to be convenient. And you're going to get to the point where it's going to be uncomfortable to drive this thing. And it's just going to end up sitting in your driveway and you're going to take the van anyways.
There's a possibility that happens.
Yeah.
It'll probably be largely dependent on temperature.
Probably.
If it's above 100 degrees, I might take the van.
So when I was doing my flight training, when I got my pilot's license,
I didn't know you had a pilot's license.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. So when I my PPL,
what were you 6?
What was that?
What? Sorry, never mind.
We flew a pretty older, clapped out high wing Cessna that it had a nice panel in it, but otherwise it was a touch rough. And there's a company that sells basically a Walmart Igloo plastic cooler and a couple of fans and some tubing, and you just dump a bag of ice in it and it runs the air through the ice and then has a flexible, imagine almost like lock line, but 3 inches around that just comes out the top. Yeah. You can point it. And so we would put that thing in the back seat flying around Northern California and just point that at ourselves. And we would spend an extra hour in the air just because it felt so good up there. And it would not be hard to go buy a $30 Igloo cooler and a PC fan. And I didn't have a 3D printer back then. 3D print a couple things for it. and there's your air conditioning in your Prius.
Yeah, I don't think I'm doing that.
It worked great.
But
Worked phenomenal.
anyway, well,
Oh
I'll give
well.
you an update next week because yesterday I was just like super angry at it because I was sitting there stewing in my own sweat. Um, but I'll sleep on it for a couple days. I'll get the new title, so it's a nice clean.
There you go.
You know, the one they gave me was like folded up and stuff, um, and I might sell it.
Please do. It'll be
We'll see.
hilarious to hear what Harrison thinks about this, either when he listens to the podcast or when you have him on next week.
The YouTube comments are going to be fun. Should we do a
Yeah.
poll? All right, guys, what do I do with the car? Do I fix it up? Do I sell it as is, or do I do something halfway in between where like I do a little bit of work on it, but not a lot of work?
Let's just hope people listen this long.
And if anybody wants a Prius, only
And
$1,600.
$1,600. That's awesome.
Yeah, then I make 100 profit.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And for anyone who has also listened this long, little self plug. We have a Taps and Patience Instagram now. I forgot to talk about this earlier. I totally meant to mention it earlier in the show. And the Patreons. You should probably talk about those. But the Instagram, I made the Instagram weeks ago, but never posted on it. Like, it was just kind of a placeholder. Didn't want anyone to take the name. And Meta / Facebook, Instagram, whoever, every time we would log in would like lock our account because there was no posts, no comments, no follows, anything. And it got to the point where you had to like identity verify every time. And I just had a random selfie of AJ on my phone that I would submit every time that he sent me for a thumbnail one time. And it got really frustrating. So I just decided to start posting on it. That way it hopefully wouldn't do that. And I just use Zencaster, like our recording software gives us like some short form clips automatically generated. I just started posting like 1 or 2 of those a day. And we've been up for 8 or 9 days now. And we're like quickly approaching 100 followers. We've done no promotion of it whatsoever. And it's like people are just kind of naturally finding it, which surprised me significantly. So if you're listening, go follow Taps and Patience on Instagram.
I haven't had a single person ask for our website to come back.
Oh, yeah.
So
one of these days, I'll like just have ChatGPT write us a static site, and I'll put it like I already have an Nginx instance on our Subtract cloud.
We could just forward it to Subtract.
We could. That's not a bad idea.
I mean, we own the domain, so
yeah. Oh well. But Instagram, Patreons, Discord. AJ, this is you.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say something like that I could use as a fun transition.
The segue to our sponsor.
Yeah. Anyway, since Jacob's not setting me up with a fun transition, or I can't call the Patreons a mean name, our Patreons include, but are not limited to, Austin W., Kyle K., Devin at Sinister Machine Works, James N., Bennett, Prickly Pear Prototypes, Cam S., Shep at Alderson Prototyping, Jacob is on. I forgot to mention something. Jacob is on Precision, Jason S., Joshua H., Christian Z., Dylan at Got Chips, Freaky Climber, Prescott at 1Z, 2Z Systems, Trey V., Guy L., Alexander B., Scott at Design the Everything, Jamie at J Spec Engineering, Chris Ike at Ike Precision, EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Chris at Thought Bomb Design, and as ever, Jake Brownson.
What'd you forget?
I think I know what I'm going to use the anchor point system for the first time. That's the 0 point system from Jamie at JSpec Engineering. I have been designing a little piece of marketing material. I just dropped something on my keyboard. Sorry. I've been designing a little piece of a marketing material that we can send out to all of our, basically everybody who we know with a YouTube channel or an Instagram to promote Subtract Some. That piece of marketing material is a machined calculator because Subtract. I have had a huge amount of fun designing this thing. It's like a throwback to, the early days of Design the Everything where we just had to design things and not make money on them. So I started with one of these little Casio calculators, and we're making a case for it. But I've had just a lot of fun with the design. And I was thinking about it. I want to palletize these because I think I'll probably need to make a fair number of these calculators. As designed right now, there is an outer case, and then there's a bunch of buttons, and then I think the backside I'm going to 3D print and then have a cork piece that'll be laser cut that'll kind of take the role of the back plane. I think that's the most reasonable way of like having a nice machine thing to advertise our machining company, also keep the complexity down. There's no fasteners this way, there's no tapped holes. And basically just one expensive machined piece plus a bunch of like buttons that'll be salami sliced or maybe super glue methoded. But I was like, I should put this on an anchor point palette, and my plan is to keep that anchor point at school so I can use it with my class there. But I can also put the Aroa mounting stuff on the bottom of it, and I think I can use both at the same time. So I can swap it onto, or maybe I just get another anchor point. Might be the easier option. But then I can move it around between school or do it here, because I'd like to kind of machine some of these calculators while I'm at school. I don't always have students while I'm in school. Sometimes I'm just there in the classroom and I can just kind of keep it running. But
That
I
makes
might
sense.
use it for that.
Yeah, they're really cool. I got to play with mine a little bit more this past week. I haven't
The
moved
anchor
any of
point,
my
not the
parts
calculator.
onto it. Yeah, the anchor point. Well, I have gotten to play with the calculator in terms of watching you design it ever so slowly via picture updates. The anchor point is like really cool. I got it actually like mounted on the table and actuated it and like ran a facing op on the blank palette. I don't have anything to actually like machine on it at this moment in time, but I had a little spot on the table where I could throw it. I'm like super stoked, and I'm like trying to figure out the perfect project to put on it. But of course, I bought the tool not knowing what I was gonna put on. Like I had nothing in mind instead
Can you
outside
just put it
of
in the middle of your table and do everything on it?
probably. Like I've seen. I think Jamie had a picture of it adapted to one of the little import vices,
Mm-hmm.
and then that would be my version of Aroa instead anchor point. So like considering doing something like that, or I might make a little mini palette for smaller super glue method stuff because it's pretty easy. Like then I can get to all sides of the palette easily. My current like super glue method is a half-inch thick piece of aluminum plate that's 12 by 8, and I just toe clamp it down to the table or strap clamp or whatever. And that's fine, but like you end up getting close to the clamps in some spots and it gets a little hairy. So this might turn into my small to medium super glue setup. Because again, it's easy to do outside of the machine. I can make 2 pallets and swap them when, like that's my issue with super glue most of the time is I might have 9 minutes of cycle time, but that it takes me 15 minutes to like prep the surface and get a new one put on there and rip the old powder coat tape off and get it swapped out.
Yeah.
Super cool piece of Jamie was kind enough to give us a coupon code.
What was it, like just the tip 69 or something like that?
It's tap that 25.
Oh, I was close.
Yeah, it's very, very on brand for Jamie. So there will be a link in the description if you guys like them. It's a really affordable anchor point, affordable 0-point system made out of South Africa. Makes it in his garage. Super awesome.
One of the things I underestimated is just like the overall cost of ownership in the long term on it is so low because the pallets are so cheap and easy to make.
Yeah.
It's basically like buy a piece of Mike 6 or whatever and bore 2 holes and do a threaded hole and bam, it's a pallet. So
yeah,
good job on that, Jamie.
Well Jamie killed it. I think he said, we were talking back and forth. So I ran one of his blank pallets through our Subtract like quoting system just to see what we would charge for one in comparison. And it was like pretty close to double, even if you ordered like 40 of them.
The pallets?
Yeah, the blank pallets.
I wonder if we could set up like a standardized design and set up a deal with someone. And if people wanted to order custom anchor point pallets through Subtract, we could because it's a semi-standardized thing, we could make them for cheaper.
Partially. Yeah, so we went back and forth and kind of did a bit of an analysis on what was going on. Part of it was like we overquoted the cycle time on the part. Like I think he said that his cycle time was about 4 minutes. We quoted it at like 11 minutes, which I think is just us being conservative on the feeds and speeds.
Was it because we don't use a face mill on our Subtract quoting?
Possibly.
I bet that's why, or at least part.
Yeah, so there was that. Our material cost was about double what his is, and like actually shopping for retail material here in the US compared to in South Africa, like was remarkable. Like it was just very, very inexpensive for the same aluminum material. And on top of that, like our machine time cost per hour was also quite a bit higher. Um, I think he's talked about it that his machine time is like in the $40 range, and we're
Oh,
basically double that for all of ours. So
yeah.
not only was our cycle time double, our hourly for the cycle time was also double.
Also, the way our quoting works right now, we are really not competitive for simple parts. We
No.
just like the basically we charge too much. Well, I don't say too much. We charge correctly for setups and programming. Um, but there's a lot of small shops that don't charge correctly for that stuff. And so because of that, we become not competitive on simple stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had a part come through. One of our, I think it was one of our Patreon members on the Discord, just reached out and said, "Hey, I'm curious about this part. I just did a bunch of them, and I might be getting more. I'm curious to see what you guys would quote for it, and if it like makes sense for me to send them. Like, I might just send them to you guys because I really don't want to deal with that simple part." And it was like a decent quantity. I sent him the part, and I sent him our quote on it, and he said, "Oh, okay, like it's really expensive." And we went back and forth, and I think we quoted it like I think for a short run, we quoted it at like $350, and he had just sold the part to his customer. He had done it for $150 and couldn't figure out like where the discrepancy was. And we went back and forth and kind of figured it out. Well, 2 days later, he goes to Xometry and puts the price in, and apparently he undercut Xometry's foreign manufacturing by like 25% or something like that. And he was like, "Oh, apparently I just didn't quote nearly correctly on these." And given we were still high, but not, you know, not not that far off. So I was pretty surprised about that. Well, I guess we're done. Thank you guys for hanging out this week. This has been Jacob from Zone and Precision and AJ from Audacity Micro, both of us from Subtract. Appreciate you guys hanging out. And
At this point, they know who we are.
well, Harrison says it every time, and I listen to Harrison.
It's been 120 episodes with Harrison, and I've never actually said that thought out loud.
Okay, well, thanks guys for hanging out. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Join us next week for another episode. Thank you guys. Taps and patience, our daily grind. In this machine shop, we'll always find joyous struggles, all intertwined. Taps and patience, one of a kind. There's no way that Harrison listens to the end of this episode and is going to hear that feedback, so. Probably not.